Atlanta to conduct election of California. It is absolute madness to hope that people who despise you, people who are looking for how to put you down, will allow you elect or will give you options that will give you somebody who begin to rebuild the place. They are looking for how to destroy the rest of the place. That's why they get the kind of, it's not by accident that we have had this kind of people we've had as governors and senators all through. They are looking for, the bigger the skeleton in your cupboard, the more qualified you are in the eyes of this system. Because then you'll be prepared to swear and defend and uphold, this atrocity, because it gives you money that is far bigger than what you can earn in any business. And then it shields you from any kind of probe from people who are, you can imagine we've just given 5 items out of 68. So those 68 items in that exclusive list, they are like 68 different chains tied, one on your neck, another one on your left hand tied to one pillar, another one on your right hand tied to another pillar, another one on your waist, the other one on your leg, the other one on your knee. Every single item on that exclusive list is reason why one thing or the other is the way they are with you. The road from Enugu to Onitsha, I'm sure some of you see it on social media all the time. The road from Port Harcourt to Enugu, all of you see it, all around the country. You saw the ones in Cross River coming to Port Harcourt. Because they call it, they say it's federal highway. That's the road connecting the state capitals are federal roads. And so if they want to turn it into a death trap, even if you have the money and you have the willpower to do the road as governor, you are not going to, it is the federal asset. The Aba you see, let me shock you. The Aba you see that is now under a deluge. Everywhere you turn, water is gone past the knee towards the waist. Everywhere you turn to, once the rains come. What was the problem? How did it come to be? The governors that have been sauntering in and sauntering out of that government house in Umuahia, they refused to listen when we told them what the problem is. What is the problem? The expressway that goes to Port Harcourt from Enugu, the portion that passes Aba, that begins around Osisioma and goes all the way to past where the spare parts, some of you who have gone to Port Harcourt, and you know where they said the spare parts, in the area where the railway crossing, happens. Now, that road, Aba is to the left. Aba city is to the left as the road was being built. The road was raised, well above the, what you call the ground level in that, general ground level in that area. All the waters that come from rains falling into Aba, most of the waters, discharge, they go, what should have been under that expressway to the right-hand side where you begin to see a chair going towards the Atlantic Ocean. The natural bodies of water that take water out of Aba from every kind of rain and other sources of water, the waters discharge right towards, as coming from Enugu, Aba is to your left. So those waters leave Aba into the right-hand side, going towards the Atlantic Ocean. But because the wicked Nigerian state, guided by Britain, wanted to punish Aba for their roles in chasing them out of Nigeria. You remember the Aba women riot. You also remember that in Biafra, Aba was the only city that was not overrun. Now, what was to be done to punish Aba was to deluge the city and cause it to decay. They built that road, blocked those water channels, did not put, it would only have put in culverts, a number of culverts from the Osisioma section to around that railway, so that all the waters that will have to leave Aba through the natural waterways, you know how it is. Water canalize themselves, until they get to the ocean. So they will continue to move. They blocked all of that, raised that road so high. In one rainy season, Aba was flooded, deluged. The height of the water from the ground covered the first floor of all most of the buildings on the Port Harcourt Road in Aba, the portion that lead to that Ungwa High School, the place where you remember the school where they shot the IPOB people that came to pray. Those people who went to pray in that school did not know the story of that school compound in the Biafran war. If they knew the story of that school compound, they would not go anywhere near that school with a Biafran flag, because it was the graveyard of several federal troops, and the weapons supplied them by Russia. Abba never came down. Abba resisted. In fact, when Ojukwu saw that he could not, he was not likely to make to make it out alive, when in his closing days, he made an adjustment to his will. And that was the only thing he demanded to be done for him. He instructed that his earthly remains should not be buried, except it is shown to Aba people. I will come back to why that instruction was given, and if there be anybody present in this meeting who knew when Ojukwu was buried and the day he was taken to Aba, you will relate with what I'm saying. Why he had to put that instruction. He's from Nnewi in Anambra. Why did he say they should show his body to Aba people? Because Aba was the only Biafran city that was never overrun. Because of the resilience, that spirit of that became what you call the Aba women riot, started everywhere else, but culminated in that city and became the beginning of the expulsion of the British from Nigeria, because it was what happened from there that led to what became the coal miners, revolt in 1949, and you couldn't postpone independence anymore because these people had revolted against the British. So Aba was designated for destruction by the forces that colonized Nigeria and still colonize Nigeria. So Aba was deliberately flooded into what you see now. There's no solution to that problem. There's no solution to that Aba that you see in decay. I know most of our guests today, most of our listeners today are from the eastern part. There's no solution to that problem other than putting water culverts, something that will convey the water out of Aba from underneath that express. But the governors will not go there because that express is federal asset. That's the only reason why Aba will decay to the point where you see it all. There's nothing the governors are going to be able to do about that outside tampering with that federal, exclusivity of control in channeling water out of that Aba.
Mr. Nnadi, thank you.
Go on and on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nnadi. If I may, for a moment, we appreciate your presence here. We are speaking with the Honorable Mr. Tony Nnadi, a lawyer, activist. He is the Secretary General of the Lower Niger Congress, and he is also a leader in NINAS. So we are discussing the fraudulence of the Nigerian Constitution. Yeah. So thus far, Mr. Nnadi has given us a wealth of history in his submissions, and has delved into some of the details of the Nigerian Constitution that has put us in the impasse that we are in currently. But before we speak further about the discussion, I would like for you, Mr. Nnadi, please, to give us your background. I mean, you are dropping gems here with regards to the content of the Constitution and the historical context. But we'd like to understand a little bit more about yourself with regards to how did you get involved in this struggle? What prompted you or motivated you to get involved in this struggle and has brought you here thus far? Thank you.
Like I said before, thank you. I lost a scholarship in primary 5 right there in Abeokuta on account of where I came from. There was a competition that was organized for primary school pupils at the time Ogun State was first created. And I was the one, because it was more of aptitude test. I was the one who qualified from my school. My school had primary 6 A, B, C, D to F. But I was the one who qualified from my school. And we went on from wards to council to zone to finals. And at the end of the day, the first prize, the first winner, first runner-up and second runner-up, they were all not from Ogun State. The prize advertised was scholarship up to university level for the first prize, scholarship to the end of secondary school for second prize, and some cash reward for the third prize. When it turned out that the first, the winner, myself, was from Imo State. Then Abia had not come. Imo was also new, And then the second place was taken by somebody from Bendel State. The third from another from Imo. We were all children of uniformed, services personnel, and the organizers found it very awkward. How are they going to, something? They just changed everything into cash prize. Of course, while I was very sad and went asking questions of my headmaster who was carrying, the headmaster of the winning school, the winning pupil, he carried me to every venue of those competitions. And yet, we had won, but I was sad. What happened? Why did they change? The man was very frank with me. He said, because you are not from, you can imagine a child in primary 5, being confronted with such a thing. The money I was given in an envelope it was a fat envelope. And that was just, I think it was 3 years after the Udoji Award in 1974, when when oil money came and civil servants were given, some bonus. All of them were paid. And, it became some money they could use to sort out all kinds of things. And then here was my father also receiving this envelope where there was several times the salary of the time. Of course, the man must have been happy to have money to do all kinds of other things. But this young man was very sad. And from the answer the headmaster gave, because what made me so different, that I wasn't qualified to take home the prize. That was my, a young mind asking such question, shocked by the kind of thing that one answer led to the other, and I asked more and more questions until I got to where it formed a question mark in my mind and on my head. By the time I got to secondary school, I was more interested in learning about all kinds of things that were being concealed from the children of the time. And I'm going to give you one example that will shock you. The kind of concealment Nigeria had done, quite apart from the one British did. By the time we were coming to me, I didn't want to go to any damn university. I wanted to go to, the Nigerian Defense Academy to be a military pilot. And therefore, I studied all the physics and chemistry that was required to get into all of that. Again, I got to the NDA, and it was, again, the Nigerian factor that made it impossible for me to stay, because I was from the wrong part of the country. They would not hand a jet fighter over to somebody from my part. Was for me. I didn't know then that they had all kinds of monitoring devices. They sent people who were not candidates. Some of you have gone to the NDA and you know that the interviews last one whole month and you are kept in battalions. And they send people who look like you in terms of young people, dressed like you, sleep with you, pretending to be candidates. They are probing into your political thoughts, whether you knew what the problem was, what your attitude towards all kinds of things. I didn't know they had a file on me, and I was busy enlightening my colleagues and my mates about what our country was like. That was the reason I didn't stay, because they wouldn't let me. They gave me only the things I had rejected. They said you could go to, if you want to be in the Air Force, you can be engineer. If you want to go to the Army, they were pointing at all the wrong directions. You can go to the Navy, but not. And so that became the reason why I had to, eventually, move over to go to study law with the sciences I had read, because at that time there was no GSM or telephone to reach anybody who wasn't in some place we could reach them. my forms were filled in my absence. And it was because the qualification, nobody was sure. The people filling the form because I refused to write jam exams. I refused to write. I wanted only to go to the NDA. And because I wasn't going to fill any jam form or write it was bought and filled in my absence. But the people filling the form, they weren't sure of the subjects. They knew I had all my credits. But what were those subjects? So they began to look for a course in the university that, because in some of those courses at that time, law was what they found at the University of Nigeria, that the requirement was English language and any other 4 subjects. That was how I ended up with law. They filled in my absence. I came back 1 week to the exam and wrote my usual physics and chemistry and mathematics. That was how I ended up in law. But it was in the final year that I began to see why Providence took me through that route to study, the sciences and end up in law, because it became the key to solving the jurisprudence that was the problem of Nigeria. Having lost that scholarship in primary school, having been blocked from getting into from staying in the military of Nigeria, I moved on. I ended up in the oil industry when I finished from this. It was again in course of my work in the service section upstream of the oil industry. I worked in a service company that had charge over what Shell, Mobil, Chevron, and all of them were doing with NNPC in terms of sourcing of when you hear joint venture cash calls, where those monies, those billions of dollars are spent, Nigerians, all of the people in that NNPC building get to know only what Shell decides to tell them. That was the kind of concession that your Gowon that signed off the oil and gas assets of Eastern region for 50 years. That was the kind of document he signed. He hadn't gone to school at the time. He went to school only after he had been overthrown in 1975. This kind of school certificate you saw in the hands of the other people who have been generous time and over in Nigeria was the kind of what all of them had. They went to school only after. And so that oil concession, the concessions that by which Shell and Mobil and Chevron, you saw all the years it took them to try to change a few things in that concession, what they call petroleum industry bill. They didn't know what the people in the National Assembly didn't know what the demons they were dealing with. They didn't know what was contained underneath in what was presented to them to adjust. The people who wrote, the British, who wrote what they wanted and got the one to sign as basis of taking over the crisis that happened in the 1960s and that which they turned into war, so that they can have a permanent hold on what was signed up for them. It cost the Eastern Nigeria 3.5 million lives because people wanted to take hold of that, oil and gas asset. That's how we got here. And so they've managed to put all those things down into constitutional, framework and impose it as the basis of the union, the law we must obey, the constitution that controls everything, the ownership structures, the security architecture, the structure of the union itself in terms of how many states and how many local government areas, and how the representation emerges in Abuja, how the asset distribution will be undertaken. When you look at all of it, you will see that we are in a situation far worse than apartheid South Africa. Because in apartheid South Africa, the Boers were developing, they were building a society of rule of law. The only thing the blacks were excluded. As London was being built, Johannesburg was being built. Some of you who have been in South Africa will realize it doesn't look like other parts of Africa. But what do we have here? The local agents of the British, they call the Fulani, were the ones who were put in charge from the beginning, 1914. They got here in 1804 by jihad. And so by the time the British came in the 1860s, it was a matter of bringing what they have from the south in terms of conquest and deceit. The colonies and the protectorates and trading treaties they had with all kinds of, patches of territories here. They put them together in 1906. And by 1914, they began to merge them with what they got from the north. What was it they got from the north? The areas conquered by these jihadis that came in 1804. They were going to get into a fight, but somehow, like two robbery gangs that decided to cooperate over a common target. That was what became Nigeria in 1914. The Caliphate bringing what they hold, and the British bring what they hold. That joint venture is what became your Nigeria. That joint venture is still alive and well, selling 3 million barrels of crude oil every day. And that constitution that they have imposed, was from the beginning the same thing, the same objective to subjugate the owners of the land, put them in a situation where they can challenge the owners of the joint venture. From 1914 to 1922 to 1946 to 1954, I'm sure you heard about Richardson and Littleton and McPherson Constitution. Everything was intended for the purpose we have seen now. And then the war became, the 1967 to 1970 war became the period they now had, like a blank check to take over whatever they wanted to take over. Things that were actually recovered by the owners of the land in the Lancaster House Agreement were all swept back into their pockets, and they're holding it to date. And then, why are we discussing the Constitution? Some people who do not understand what Constitution is. They think that the Constitution is one document the lawyers use to go to ply their trade. No, the Constitution is actually the union. So if you understand it to mean union agreement, you discover that if there's no union agreement, then there's no union. If we do not agree to be in the same union with those who impose Sharia in 12 contiguous states, then there's no union. And so when after the thorough, research that led us to the documents of what the British concealed from our fathers, Azikiwe born 1904, the other one 1906, Awolowo, none of them, they were mere children at the time 1914 happened. So that none of them knew what the British had put together. They only grew up to fall into that into what was already in place. And they were all those things were concealed by way of what did they say when you keep a document when you conceal a document from public view, they were classified, colonial records that were classified. So the people who signed us into independence, and Enohoro was one of those, the one that moved the motion for independence in 1953, he was a part of this process from the time we came to him with what we had found out. I did ask him, sir, are you aware of this? And after 1 week of interrogation of the documents we got, because we had to get the documents by all means, the same way WikiLeaks will get its own documents, to get to the foundation of the country that was not going anywhere. And Nohoro said to me, if we knew that this was what the British had concealed underneath, we would not have signed ourselves into this union, because it was a union of death from beginning, an impossible union. Some of those documents are now on the website of Lower Niger Congress and NINAS, www.ninasvoice.org. You are going to find those documents that predated Nigeria. www.lowernigercongress.org. You'll find the documents that are posted there now, if you search. And so we went on from having confronted our elders, the ones who were still alive at the time, Pope Harriman, Ojukwu himself that had been through a war on those same issues, because it was these same issues that led to that war that consumed 3.5 million lives. Bankoloki, that was the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Defense that carved out the Air Force from the Army. These are people who were the foundation laying of the Nigeria that emerged in 1960. We confronted them to say, how did we get here? And they saw that we had a better grasp of what the problem was, because we have education, we have exposure, we've done our research, we've drawn up a plan. We wanted to sound it out with them to say, what do you think about this? And they all signed up into this process, one after the other, from the two sides of the war. I was privileged to be invited to a meeting in Benin in the office of Solomon Asemota, senior advocate. He's still alive and well. Ojukwu was invited by Enohoro. Enohoro was the spokesman of the federal side in that war. He was their chief negotiator. Ojukwu was the leader of the Biafran side of that war. And I was invited to come to talk to all of those who were on one side or the other. James Otobo, the deputy to Dennis Osadebe, was about close to 90 years at the time, was in that meeting. 14 of them. The youngest person present in that room was Femi Okuroumu, the one that Jonathan eventually appointed to lead the preparation for the 2014 conference. What was the business? The same thing you have invited me to come to tell you today was what I had gone to tell those men that day, to say, this was what happened to your country. This was how you got to war. This is how you can't do anything except to solve this problem. And in all of what done.
All right. Just to step in a little bit while Mr. Nnadi comes back. So we are discussing the fraudulent constitution with the Honorable Mr. Tony Nnadi, as I like to call him. I know he doesn't like titles, but I'm going to bestow that upon him. So basically, thus far, Mr. Nnadi gave us some nuances into the constitution by citing several sections of it that puts power in the hands of the government to do whatever they want. Section 6C, which says that the government has no obligation to the citizens. Section 81 and 82, which allow the president to manipulate the finances of the country and the budget. Section 308, which gives absolute immunity from probing or any kind of criminal activity. Okay. Section 121 and 122, which again is a similar one for the governors, the immunity and things like that. And then of course the infamous exclusive list, which puts all the powers that matter in the hands of the federal government: electricity, arms and ammunition, resources, control, even elections. And so Mr. Nnadi has given us a good foundation to understand exactly why the construct called Nigeria cannot work. He went on to explain the historical context and the part the players that were in play at that time. And finally, he gave us his background and how he actually ended up, by accident of history, becoming a part of this struggle to bring down this fraudulent constitution due to the nepotism that he suffered while he was in primary school and at the I believe the military college. You put it, and yeah. So I'm going to move on now and allow Mr. Nnadi to finish his thoughts, and we can discuss further in the specifics of how we are going to. How you propose that we pull down this constitution, and then we'll move on to a final segment of questions and answers. So, Mr. Nnadi, please, if you would finish your thoughts and also explain to us exactly how you propose that this constitution be pulled down. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The most important thing we need to bear in mind so that we can understand the undertaking, like doctors who first diagnose before they prescribe and then begin to treat. In that order, what I've shared with us now is the diagnosis of that ailment, Nigeria, that terminal ailment of Nigeria, because the false claim that we, the people, have submitted ourselves into this union under these terms captured in this constitution is what we have to resolve now. The contention of those of us who are leading this charge is that we have not met, we have not agreed to submit our lands and our people and our sovereignties and our assets into this union as defined by this constitution, because it's also alleged that we wrote what is contained. We couldn't have submitted ourselves in this manner. We couldn't have made ourselves permanent political minority. We couldn't have given the spare keys to the treasury to people who we also absorb of responsibilities towards ourselves as citizens. We couldn't have listed all of these assets to be controlled by people who don't owe us any kind of explanation for what they do. We couldn't have given immunity to those who are given charge over the process of our commonwealth. And so what we prescribe what we have chosen to do, because it is well within our rights to do so. You saw the other day, a few days ago, a court declared that the right to the agitation for self-determination is legal. Yes, that was what some of us knew. That was what NINAS, that was what Lower Niger Congress knew from the beginning, which was why we set out a process to exercise that right, self-determination. And let us make a distinction very quickly. Self-determination simply means what it says, to determine for yourself how you live in your ancestral space. Now, some people think that self-determination means, secession, living union. It doesn't automatically translate to that. Self-determination means you are the one who decided. And when we then looked at how we got to that bad arrangement, it was the constitution we have was imposed in negation of our right to self-determination. And if you thought I was speculating, you go to section 14.2a of that constitution that admitted that sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom the government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. I repeat, section 14.2a of the 1999 constitution, to tell you the ultimate source of our current misery. That constitution admits that sovereignty, I'm quoting now, sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority, meaning that the sovereignty that belongs to Yoruba, sovereignty that belongs to the Igbo, sovereignty that belongs to the Igbo, their land, their assets, and everything that go with their sovereignty, is what they will bring to the table to make a constitution, union agreement, under which they now empower a few, like a management team they're hiring, to run the enterprise, that's the union, of course, with rules dictated by them. Now, it was in the pretense that we, the people, we, the Yoruba, we, the Beron, we, the Ijo, we, the T, we, the Ogoni, had submitted and had agreed and submitted ourselves into the union and drawn up the constitution by ourselves. It was in that pretense, that they were going from the prescription of that 14.2a, because it's a universal truism. Your sovereignty remains with you. Even when the British were here, our sovereignty was with us, just that it was suppressed by what we call the suzerainty, the supervening, foreign power. It's called suzerainty. We moved away in 1960 from the suzerainty of the British to the suzerainty of the Fulani. That's what we're contending with right now. They've seized everything by the constitution they imposed. They are now eliminating the owners of the land to avoid future claims. That is the ethnic cleansing going on now. And it is that constitution that hands them all the guns and tie our hands to the back that empower them to do what they are doing. Whatever we complain about, I will show you the section that is responsible. And then if you thought they didn't know what they were doing, you go to the decree number 24 of 1999 by which that constitution was imposed, Absalami's decree. It was in that decree that they told the story of how they came about the constitution. Absalami himself telling the story, that he formed a committee they call Constitution Debating Committee that went around and collected opinions of various people. Meanwhile, the people who are supposed to be discussing is not in hotel rooms. You go and select your friends to go and meet people to say they are discussing what will become constitution. It is an originating meeting that the people discussing must be the owners of the sovereignty. It must be Yoruba as represented by Yoruba people mandated for the purpose of discussing how their land can be submitted into a union. The kind of thing they went to discuss in Lancaster House, the nationalities going to discuss the terms by which they submit their lands and their people into union. That's the kind of thing that was supposed to happen. But when Absalom and Co. were doing their thing, they formed a committee that in which they selected their friends from various places, headed by some judge, and they went all kinds of hotel rooms all around and came back to say that most people wanted a return to 1979 constitution. And therefore, they accepted the report of that committee. That's the Supreme military council of the time, they called the Armed Forces Ruling Council, accepted the report of that committee according to them, and removed what they thought was bad, added what they thought was good, and signed into law to be called the 1999 Constitution, to come into effect on the 29th of May in 1999. But they left an instruction, and that's where they destroyed the life of that constitution. That's the key. Providence are put in our hands to get out of this bondage and prison. Subsection 3 of section 1, it was a 2-section decree. Subsection 3 of section 1 of that decree number 24 of 1999 left an instruction that when the constitution will be printed, the federal government printer will have to omit all the references to decree in that constitution, and the decree so printed will have the force of law. What they were planning to do with that instruction is that this decree itself of how the constitution was generated, the story of how Constitution Debate Committee went round and settled for something else, was not supposed to be known to you and I. It was not supposed to be printed along with, it was in error. It was a divine mistake. God caused them to make the mistake of printing that decree number 24 along with the Constitution. And that, the Constitution, if you go out to traffic tomorrow and buy Constitution, you are going to see this story I'm telling you printed along. They could no longer withdraw it because that was what was gazetted. That was what all the embassies were given. And that decree number 24, as printed inside that constitution, is the proof that we, the people, never met according to the requirement of constitution making. Can you connect the three now? That decree number 24, printed in error into the document, defeats the claim that we, the people, makes it a fraud, makes it a forgery. That is the proof we have that we never met, we never agreed to form a union, and we never made any constitution according to what is required to make a valid constitution. It is not the National Assembly that makes constitution. Let all the lawyers in the house hear it now, and if there's anybody who has a contrary opinion or a contrary suggestion on that subject matter, I will be more than glad to hear him when the microphones are open for people to speak. The mandate, the legislative mandate of the National Assembly is limited to lawmaking. Constitution making is a totally different transaction, far above the powers of the National Assembly. Even amendment, it is only when we have made constitution that National Assembly is now empowered with rules we set by ourselves, so that they don't depart completely from what we do. And even if they do any changes, they will have to come back to us in referendum to approve. That is what happens with constitutions. The power to make constitution is called constituent powers. The National Assembly does not have constituent powers. Constituent powers is incidental to our sovereignty. It's exclusive to the constituents. The Yoruba only decide what they do with Yoruba land. The Ijo only decide what they do with Ijo land. And that power to decide is exclusive to them. It's never delegated to National Assembly. So those who sit in Abuja telling us about amendment, those who draft constitution to say, okay, let's write a better constitution and send to them to process, and so that we can have a new constitution. What the campaign we are leading is not one to go and write another constitution. We are questioning the union itself. We are saying that the federation that we agreed to be is no more. It died in 1967. People are holding us here against our will. We are saying that the secular union we agreed to be is no more because a section of the country, 12 contiguous states, imposed simultaneously Sharia. So it has taken us away from being a secular state. Contrary to section 10 of as bad as that constitution is, it still forbids. It says in section 10, again I quote, it says, the government of the federation or that of a state shall not adopt any state religion. Full stop. That is the shortest section in your constitution. I repeat, section 10 says, the government of the federation or that of a state shall not adopt any state religion. Full stop. That is the section that makes Nigeria a secular state. So from the point in year 2000, 12 contiguous states went ahead to impose Sharia, their state House of Assembly passing the Sharia, and their governors signing and forming Hizbah to the Sharia police, and they began to chop up people's hands. You saw the governor in Zamfara. What's his name? Sani Yerima, the one that led the charge. You saw him chopping off the hand of a citizen, Jangebe, at the time. Say he stole goat or cow, I can't tell. And so they moved away from the secular union we were trying to build. Our interpretation of their action, because they are contiguous and they acted simultaneously, our interpretation is that they seceded from our secular union. Now they've regrouped to come to try to reconquer all of us. Since we have defeated the title deed, that constitution is the title deed by which they enter your spaces. And so in tackling that constitution, it is because we want to compel a renegotiation of the union from the position of no union that we entered since 1967, other than the brigandage by which they've held everybody together. And even the constitution of 1979 was also a product of this same kind of process. Murtala Muhammad commissioned it. People, Rotimi Williams and Ben Wabeze, wrote the draft that went before the Constituent Assembly of 1977. Murtala Muhammad had been killed in 1976, but the draft that came by his commission went before Obasanjo, their man, took the matter to form the Constituent Assembly that processed that draft into what became the 1979 Constitution. Even the Constituent Assembly rejected most of the things they imposed by brigandage. But Obasanjo on the 21st of September in 1978, I want those who have pen and paper to take note of these specifics so that we are like before a shrine, looking back into how we got into this mess. On the 21st of September in 1978, after the Constituent Assembly had submitted its clean report, that is the clean copy, the final product from their deliberations that should have become constitutional rights straight from there, going only to referendum. The Supreme Military Council, headed by Obasanjo, announced 17 amendments from the finished works of that Constituent Assembly and passed the balance into law, into what became the 1979 Constitution. And so, even the 1979 Constitution was not a product of we the people as claimed in the preamble to that Constitution. If anybody has a contrary story to tell about this, the documents are with us. Anybody who wants to examine them can examine them by just requesting. And so, in claiming that people in 1999 had wanted a return to 1979, neither the 79 nor 99 was a product of the people. Because there are some of our people, especially lawyers, who will say, well, if you reject 1999 for any reason, what of the 1979 Constitution that came from Constituent Assembly? Tell such persons that Nina said, tell such persons that Tony Nnadi said, that the 1979 Constitution is as flawed as the 1999 Constitution, to the extent that the finished work of the Constituent Assembly was overtaken and taken back to what the caliphate that imposed the terms wanted. 17 amendments. They didn't accept the states that were created in brigandage. They didn't accept the presidential system because it will accumulate power, like we have seen. So many things. Land Use Act was not, was not going to be accepted by them. It was smuggled in and put in a segment that you can't amend. It requires 4/5 majority. And let me tell you some of the things that they concealed from you. The war ended in 1970. Instead of going to address the issues that led to the war, Nigeria decided to deceive its young people by sending them to go to do youth service. That was ostensibly why the NYSC Act was passed in 1973. They said, oh, let young people who didn't participate, who didn't know what happened before, go and mix up. By the time they mix up over a few years, Nigeria will begin to get cohesion. They will understand themselves better. And so, if you schooled in one part, you go and do your youth service in the other part. That is the front end. The back end of it is that NYSC Act, which they put in the same place as Land Use Act, inside the constitution they imposed on all of us was designed to take the children of Sokoto, the children of Kano, the children of Maiduguri, to do their youth service in Port Harcourt, Warri, and Lagos, where they will be retained and absorbed by NNPC, MPA, Central Bank, that was then in Lagos, and all such Shell and Mobil. Whereas the children of Port Harcourt, the children of Enugu, the children of Warri, the children of Lagos are sent to go and perish in Kaura na Moda, in Biu, in Potiskum, with no opportunities whatsoever. They send you to rural schools to go and perish. If meningitis does not catch up with you, young pupils will kill you for wearing NYSC, trouser if you were female. It happened in Bochi, right in our eyes not long ago. And so, while their own children are given the best of opportunities in life, your own children are sent to go and perish in their dry places. 90% of the bureaucracy of Nigeria today, recruitment into that bureaucracy came from this dubious process, and they put it in the impregnable part of that 1999 Constitution, NYSC Act, with all the atrocities happening, with all the accidents of death happening. Nobody can touch it because they will continue to have justification to send their children to the best of places and send you to the worst of places. I'm sure some of you listening now understand how the people you went to school with, who were not fit to clean your shoes in class, got into an NPC before you returned from your rigmarole in the far north where you went to do your own youth service. That is the kind of country, there are so many things like that you will not believe a country could do. They took away the teaching of history so that you wouldn't know anything about what happened before. The one that didn't happen in your present, you can't know about it. How are you going to know how to avoid the pitfalls? And so the intervention script, the grand script, the 20-year plan we drew up after research that began from that 1999 was one in which we were going to mobilize all of those who are suffering from this bad arrangement across the South and Middle Belt, especially from the point where the other people imposed Sharia, because we said that they have exercised their own rights of self-determination in seceding from a secular union, because they acted together and they did it through due process of state assemblies that passed the Sharia and their governors that signed. We have no quarrel with them at all. Let them go off in self-determination. But let the rest of us who are already disputing our signature at the base of that constitution that make us slaves in our land, also step into our right to self-determination, which unfortunately for them is inalienable. That was what the court pronounced upon last week, that right to decide for ourselves how we live in our spaces, is not subject to anybody's, that's what you call the right to self-determination. And the UN happened to have been directly involved in how the instrument came in 2007. They called United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Those indigenous peoples are the Yoruba in Yoruba land, the Ijo in Ijo land, Igbo in Igbo land, Scot in Scotland, Catalonians in Catalonia. And so the UN instrument says, as long as you're a distinct nationality and you are in your ancestral space, you're entitled to be there by yourself. That is what entitles you to the right to self-determination. Nothing else. If you come in any other capacity, you were not entitled. And that was why we began to tell all our people who were pursuing one self-determination thing or the other, that you have to qualify yourself to come within the rules. If you are not within the rules, you are not. So you can't come as Southeast or Southwest to say you are pursuing for self-determination. You can't come as Biafra because it's not a distinct ethnic nationality. The territory covered by the Biafra of 1967 include Ijoland, Ogoniland, what's it called? Anang, Efik, Ibibio. All of those were in that Ikwere. They were in the eastern region that became Biafra. If you say you want self-determination for Biafra, what map are you going to put on it? If you put the map of Biafra of 30th of May 1967, you have to explain to the people who were already carved out of eastern region at the time why you say you want to restore the Biafra and include their land without coming to talk to them. They will shoot at you if you turn off in their space. And even if you drive that campaign for 50 years, you are not going to get nowhere with it, because at the place it matters most, they will be the ones being asked. Do you agree with them? That's what the question will be. And if you are looking for self-determination, all self-determination campaigns begin with maps. Over what territory do you want this independence? It ends with constitution. What has emerged after all the pushing and pulling? It could even be war. What has emerged in terms of constitution by which you live? So if you were pursuing self-determination and you don't have a specific map that defines the territory, and you don't have a plan that can become constitution emerging from that process, then you're just entertaining yourself. You're just taking unnecessary risk. And if you do not have a plan that takes down the current constitution, the constitution that defines, that creates that condition you want to escape from, again, you are joking. You can be at it for any length of time. You're not going to make one single progress other than the bloodshed that will come from the treason they will accuse you of. And it will be shoot aside, because the current constitution gives them the power to do what they can, whatever they choose to do against you. If you refuse to work with knowledge and you go with what comes to your head, that's how we got to where we are. And Nina's set up, the constitutional force majeure of December 16, 2020 was a culmination of this 20-year process that began with Pronaco, went on to the suit in 2007 challenging the legitimacy of that constitution, going on to become the MNN alliance that began to assemble the nationalities into one bloc that would take down that constitution. We have completed that process. The nationalities of the South and Middle Belt are now alive and awake to the fact that their signature was put on a document that makes them slaves in their land by people who are now determined to kill them off and permanently control those assets. That's what we're dealing with. And we invite our people to say, what we have to do now, having repudiated that constitution, because part of the process, this 20-year process, involved the loud repudiation of that constitution by the constituent blocks. Port Harcourt, Solomon Assembly of the Peoples of the Lower Niger, 27th April 2015, Ibadan, where the Yoruba gathered on the 7th of September 2017, 7th of September 2017 in Adamasingba Stadium, with their governors all present to repudiate that constitution of 1999 as basis of union. Then on the 18th of July 2018, the peoples of the Middle Belt gathered in Makurdi to also do the same. So the entire alliance had repudiated that constitution. The enforcement we are bringing now, which we are inviting everybody to, and it could be a decision of life or death. If our people will not listen to us, they will pay in blood. Fulani will get to their doorsteps, no matter how else they try to pretend about it. We say the way to stop this journey is that we must stop the renewal of the life of that constitution by war for another election, because it's only by elections that the life of the constitution is renewed. The next election in 2023, and we are telling everybody listening now, we are telling everybody in the danger of being killed by this invasion, to say what we must do is to declare and insist that we will not go to another election under that constitution. The political parties that are doing conventions, ask them, by what constitution would the winner govern? No matter who wins, they will swear to defend and uphold this constitution that makes you slaves. It is now a fight between us and those who want to go to contest election, to become president and governor, to go and take 5 billion every month, while the others don't have anything to eat. While the others can't send their children to school, while their own children are in Oxford and Harvard.
Mr. Nnadi,
Yes.
please, if I may interrupt you, apologies for that. Thank you so much. Just allow me to refresh the room a little bit, and I will yield over. So we are in the review room. I want to implore everybody who is listening to please follow the room. In this room, we discuss politics and the like. So we're talking with Mr. Nnadi with regards to this the fraudulent constitution in Nigeria. You have given us an excellent historical and legal context on why this constitution is fraudulent. At this point, we will be moving into the nitty-gritty by fielding some questions, which I imagine some of which will be very difficult questions. I hope you are prepared to entertain these inquiries. So we have some people that are on the stage. If you are, I imagine we want to know what's the mechanics exactly. How you've touched on it, but I think we need to go into more details on exactly how are we going to denounce this constitution and take it down. So if you please follow the moderators, follow the room. It's the review room. So with that, I'm going to allow some of the moderators to jump in, and we can take a cue, or we can begin to take the questions popcorn style, however we choose to proceed.
Okay, I appreciate Mr. Day, and that's a very good one. I also appreciate Dr. Tony. I like Mr. Day already said, you have to follow the club, the review, politics, history. We kind of review every aspect of politics happening in Nigeria. So I just want to tell the room that I got a very great quote from Dr. Tony Nnadi today, and he said, "The Nigerian state is a state. What's it called? Okay, the Nigerian state is a state of death from the beginning. In other words, it was created not to survive, but created to kill people, to destroy lives, and to destroy the future. So the constitution is a problem. I would like us to actually flash our mic. If you want to ask questions, if you have questions, let's take some few persons for some questions before we move to the next segment. So flash your mic quickly if you have any question to ask Dr. Tony. Then for those in the audience, you can come up. The hand raising is on. You can come up and ask your questions. I'm inviting all of us that are interested to know more about the Constitution and why it's essential to put down the Constitution for Nigeria to progress. So, anyone that has a question?
Hold on, sir. We are not, Nigeria died a long time ago. Our concern right now is for the Nigerians trapped in the rubble, not for Nigeria to progress. Let the owners of Nigeria first reassemble themselves into the Union of Nigeria by their own volition, and then they can set the rules that can take them towards progress. Therefore, NINAS is not inviting people to come and let us write another constitution to prove. We are saying, let the right to self-determination be exercised. Let us now form a union of agreement. And if our people vote in referendum to say they're no longer interested, that is the end of the discussion. It doesn't require the permission of anybody in Abuja or anywhere else. It is an inalienable right.
All right, so there was a question that came in through the back channels. If you raised your hand earlier and I declined, it is because we were not in the question and answer section. Now that we are, we are accepting invitations to come to the stage. So a question, Mr. Nnadi, can you hear me? There's a question that came back. Okay, great. So the question that came to the back channel is, what is the end game, right? If we pull down this constitution, there is a concern that there will be some form of anarchy. There will be a vacuum, and which can allow anarchy to fill that vacuum of structure and power. And so what is your response to that?
No. What we want done now, we want to rectify that fraud by offering an opportunity of those who are alleged to have formed the union by way of referendum to now decide whether to form the union or not. And if majority don't want a union with people who have embraced a civilization that owes a duty of faith to kill others as infidel, that is what most people are rejecting now. Many do not want to remain in a union of master and servant in which those who embrace a civilization that does not believe that all men are born equal, the feudalists that are holding the rest of us in servitude through the instrumentality of that constitution, that is what we want addressed. That is what that constitutional force majeure, targets. And the end game is not anarchy. I don't sound like an anarchist to you. We are saying that we must get into a transitioning. We must accept there are 5 points of demand. And that was why we said anybody who will ask question in this clubhouse or in any other clubhouse in the coming days, just a matter of days, anybody who will be allowed to ask question must be one that can tell us that he has read that constitutional force majeure by which these propositions have been made to the global community. Foreign governments have read it, invited us to explain to them a few things. Everybody who is interested in solving this carnage that is going on in the name of Nigeria and looting of unprecedented nature going on in the name of Nigeria has read it. And if those who are in that trouble are not willing to read it and they come to ask questions that have been answered in that force majeure proclamation itself, we made 5 points of demand. And what we want Nigeria to do is exactly what South Africa did with the apartheid constitution between 1990 and 1994. Acknowledge we have a problem. We've not made a constitution. Commit to decommissioning that constitution that you imposed, the one that is a fraud. Commit to not going to any further election under that constitution so that we can put a time frame. People have been shouting since 1999 about this constitution. We saw Bruce Wayne the other day come to Nigeria, the attorney from the US, coming to tell everybody that is absurd that we have allowed that constitution to stay for 22 years. A foreigner. Of course, we had engaged him, some years back in his Washington offices. And so he knows where our problems are coming from. So it's not a matter of anarchy. We will go into a transition. Those in government house, both at the center and in the states, of course, with some adjustments that we'll have to make by ourselves in terms of the mandate and the tenure and all kinds of composition of the transitional team. We're saying that instead of going towards election with a disputed constitution, because that was how we got to the collapse of Nigeria in 1966. There were constitutional disputations. The constitution of Western region had been suspended, and people, instead of fixing that anomaly, went into election, and the whole place went up in smoke. We are again in that cycle where a majority have repudiated the constitution, and a few politicians in the name of political parties are dragging us, against everybody's will towards election. And so there's no anarchy anywhere. Let us use the time left now to go and undertake the process for agreeing afresh. That is what they say, negotiate the union again. We are not anarchists. There will be governance going on, of course, with adjustments to make way for how the body with constituent powers can undertake that task. Every detail is already written in that constitutional force majeure. Anybody who has not read it but comes asking questions will only be telling us he wants to waste everybody's time. We've said this, we've made this announcement a whole number of times. Let us read what the proposition is so that we can ask questions based on what we have seen, based on what is proposed, not on our conjectures. I again plead with us. This is a question of life and death. If we do not address it, the people who are already determined to kill off the owners of this land are coming to your space. They will wave PDP and APC flag, ABGA flag before you to say, let us go and elect a better group to come and manage. But it is that same constitution that whoever wins is going to use to govern. And you will remain the slave you are under that constitution. The lawyers who go about saying they are human rights lawyers, slaves don't have human rights. Under this constitution, you are all slaves. Under this constitution, you are all slaves. If anybody tells you anything else, tell that person is lying. Because if you are not a slave, you will be in charge of your life.
Okay, please do not interrupt. Mr. Nnadi is our guest. Please do not interrupt him. Thank you.
No question. Okay. Dr. Nnadi, I want to ask you a question, and it's a bit deep. Yeah, considering that you are an Igbo man, and with a little bit of history that you told us right away, right here.
Yes.
Do you think the Constitution enslaved the Igbo ethnic group more than the rest of the ethnic nation? Because you're talking about alliances. You said that the alliances between all the ethnic nations, they should come together. So look at the Constitution. Now, do you think that there is a little bit of more bigotry against the Igbo people while creating that Constitution, according to what you said you experienced?
The Igbo had a peculiar situation. Even at the time the British got here, the Igbo fought them to the point of no return. I'm sure you heard about the Kumeku resistance, people who fought them and refused to turn over Igbo land. I'm sure you heard about women's riot. Why was it not in any other place? I'm sure you heard about the fact that the grandfather of Odumogbo Ojukwu, that is the father of Saloe, who was the paramount ruler in the Nnewi kingdom of the time, very influential, one of the organizers of the resistance, was hung in Nnewi on the orders of a British major, a major in her Majesty's army of the time. And so the Igbo resisted them. I'm sure you heard about King Njenje of Opobo that was taken out he died aboard a jeep. He had migrated from Unkwere, from Ami Igbo near Unkwere, to set up that kingdom out there. And so the British had a grouse. I'm also sure you know about the Igbo landing in the slave trade era. The Igbos, they captured and sold into slavery, getting to the US, being taken out of the ship, realizing that they've been taken to become slaves, decided to all drown in the backwaters, in the place in Virginia. Still, they call it Igbo landing. It's a historical site. People still go to visit the place. So the Igbo provided the kind of resistance the British had never met in any other place. The country Haiti today, are also Igbo free slaves that fought off, their slave masters of the time and formed the country, and then they began to punish them. Having said that, the British took particular care to make sure that the Igbo got disadvantaged even at that foundational level. It wasn't by accident that Azikiwe did not become the president of Nigeria after leading the fight to dislodge the British. But over and above all of what has been said now, let nobody make it an Igbo contention. There's nobody that the Fulani regards as equal partner in the Union of Nigeria. And so when they imposed this constitution that took everybody's assets, it was Eastern region that was going to be expropriated. But is it not the Ijo oil and gas that have been seized by that constitution imposed by the Fulani now? Is it not Lagos port that have been seized by the Fulani? What was Abiola's offense? For winning an election, he went to prison and got killed. His offense was that he, as a slave, could not aspire to rule over the house of the master. Even though he was the wealthiest, he was the chief financier, he was the closest to the military generals of the northern extraction. He was a Muslim that spent more money building mosques than anybody alive in Nigeria or even in the past, anybody to date, building mosques all over the north. And so, what was the reason Abiola was not qualified to govern Nigeria? Because there are some people who consider themselves the owners of Nigeria. Are the Yoruba now better than the Igbo in that arrangement? Is the oil and gas asset of Ondo in the hands of Ondo people now? Or the bitumen of Ondo in the hands of Ondo? Or the limestone of Benue in the hands of Benue people? Fulani took from everybody whatever belonged to them. The guns are in their hands. You see what they're doing in Benue today, killing people, taking their lands. You see the southern Kaduna, the people they sent to go and kill in eastern Nigeria at the time. They have turned against everyone. I just came back from Jos a few days ago, where I went to address the delegates from all over the Middle Belt, Gombe, Bauchi, Borno, all of Benue, Plateau, Nasarawa. They are all being slaughtered like chicken today, and their assets have all been taken. Their lands have been allotted to Fulani that came from Mali and Senegal everywhere. So it is not an Igbo only, lamentation. The whole of the indigenous, with the reason we call this alliance Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination, is that all of us who belong originally, who own these territories that we call Nigeria today, are together in the danger of extermination being, pursued by the Fulani against all of us to become the permanent owners of the entire territory. So it's not an Igbo only problem. It is a problem that has consumed Ogoni. a problem that has consumed the Ijaw, a problem that has consumed Yoruba, a problem that has consumed the Tiv, the Berom, the Kataf, the Adara, everybody. And so, since that constitution is the instrument by which this monster is prevailing, by which this invader, Fulani still streaming in from across Africa. You saw the governor of Bauchi that told us that Fulani belong here, wherever they come from in Africa. You saw when Buhari threw our borders open for them to come in. You saw Mietiala, taking responsibility for the actions of Fulani herdsmen that have been declared the fourth most deadly terror group on earth. And our president and commander-in-chief, who is supposed to be leading the fight against these invaders, killing the citizens, is actually the grand patron of Mieti Allah. He took 100 billion from the treasury to give over to Mieti Allah. These things are things in public. There's nothing I said there that we didn't go to share with the international stakeholders in the matter. Those who are at war with ISIS, and they brought ISIS to get into joint venture to be able to overrun all of us, so that Fulani can have a homeland from wherever they come in Africa, and ISIS will have an operational base. Unfortunately for them, those who are at war with ISIS in the Middle East now realize that ISIS is being brought into the West African space by the government of Nigeria, which was why they put Nigeria on the watch list and made Nigeria a country of special concern, particular concern. That is state sponsor of terror, along with Iran. If you know what that means, you go back to finding out what Ninas is saying. Next question, please.
All right, sir. Again, we are speaking with Mr. Tony Nnadi with regards to the fraudulent Nigerian constitution. So we have a few questions that came in from the back channels, but by the way, please follow the club. This is the review. Follow the club. We discuss politics and current affairs, etc. Follow the moderator so that we can ping you into the rooms whenever we have a discussion like this. So some questions came into the back channels, and I must say, Mr. Nnadi, that these are difficult questions. But before we take the back channel questions, I want to give a little bit of preference to those who actually came on stage. So, Mr. Nnadi, I saw you blinking your mic. Please go ahead.
Yes, please. All right. Thanks, Mr. Tony.
Yes.
Yes, thanks so much. I've taken time to listen extensively to you, and then also I've seen the website. I've seen Nina's. I've also seen the 5-point agenda, and I also know that what you stand for. I resonate and also stand firmly with your agenda, which I think is the way out. Now, the way I'm having a bit of disconnect is the how, and then I want to ping it on the number three on the 5-point agenda that says a formal announcement by the federal government of Nigeria suspending further general election under the disputed 1999 constitution, since winners of such election will swear to and govern by that constitution. Now, my concern is, how do we expect this to take place, knowing fully well that the state government will not be willing at any point to yield to this demand? And you, like what you have said over time, it's expected of we that are citizens to engage these political parties in a non-violent way, to be able to convince them. How do we convince these people, knowing fully well that they will not yield and they will still carry on and their business will go on as usual? So how do we get them to yield to our demand? How do we get them to I wouldn't want to use the word force, but to forcefully make them to accede to our demand, so that constitution can be pulled down? The how is what is a major disconnect, and I will be glad if you can provide.
I hear you.
Yes,
I hear you. Now, at the time in December of 2020, we rolled out this demand. We gave the federal government 90 days of notice to come to the table, because you see, we're just tolerating for the sake of peace. We are giving we're extending a limited toleration to that constitution for the sake of peace, but our lives are in danger. The only reason we are being slaughtered, the only reason we are being impoverished, the only reason we are being enslaved in our own land, chased into exile by economic circumstances and danger of security nature is because of that constitution. The people that say their government are standing on the authority of that constitution. That was why I went to section 14.2a that says sovereignty belongs to you, from whom government derives all its powers and authority through the constitution you make. And so, if we have endured it for 22 years, today there are more than 150 million, the South and the Middle Belt, the Alliance territory, more than 150 million people are in the danger of extermination. Their lives are already ruined. If the only thing we need to do to come out of that danger is to compel by whatever means, is to insist by whatever means, that the few of our brethren running around and doing political party, they want to be governor, they want to be senator, they want to be council, they want to all kinds of offices, state assembly. If we cannot insist after all these processes have been undertaken, and the only thing remaining to get free, whether you want to go to independence of Biafra, or you want to go to independence of Oodua Republic, or you want resource control to become the owner of your asset one more time, everything you want is that constitution that is standing between you and that thing. And it is the political party that is upholding that constitution in place. If these 150 million people cannot find the courage to say, starting with saying, they are not saying it now, they are allowing the politicians to advertise the election in 2023. They are going to TV everywhere, media, everybody discussing who between the PDP and APC, whose turn it is to be president the next time. That's what they are discussing. The people who have taken time to listen to us in the international arena are waiting for us to demonstrate that we reject this constitution. And the Ninas is inviting you to tell the politicians, the political parties, loud and clear, before you begin to push or do another thing, let us even say it. Let the international community, let the world hear it, that we are saying we will not go to election, any further election under this constitution. That is not being done now. It is from saying that they will now realize that a majority is saying they don't want to renew their enslavement in 2023 any further, having renewed it in 2003, 7, 11, 15, and 19. What will the next election bring other than 1,500 people or so that will be sworn in after the election to go and become governor and senator and House of Assembly member? If these 150 million people, if the young people who organized NSAS, who were complaining about only 168 police, they've not complained about electricity, they've not complained about road, they've not complained about water system, they've not complained about security, they've not complained about the election that will never go right under the centralized system. If this opportunity that we have placed on the table is not taken, for people to go and face the political parties and tell them you can't drag us to any further election, then we all deserve to be enslaved, and if they are willing to kill us, we deserve to be slaughtered. We deserve to be slaughtered and governed by cows.
Thank you, Dr. Nnadi. So we have a few questions from the back channel that came in. One of these, I want to say, please, if you're on stage, do not interrupt Dr. Nnadi. Otherwise, I will move you into the audience. So a few questions came in. One of the questions that came in was, how are we going to get the grassroots, the market women, for example? How are we going to get them are we going to convince them actually not to participate? We know about the stomach infrastructure that comes out every election cycle, the bread and the rice and the bean bags that are distributed, the Ankara, the politics of Ankara. How do we get around that and stop those at the grassroots and convince them not to participate in this coming election in order to delegitimize it?
Can I please let Mr. Tony, you don't have to really answer that question. We can have Johnny or Don answer the question because they are part of Nina's, if you wish, or you can answer if you want. But we also have
they can
yes,
add to it. But I only need to say that first we have to distinguish between boycott and shutdown. What we are asking to happen is shutdown. If all of us who are those market women don't have 1/4 of the education we have, they don't have access to the internet like we have. They are not the ones to read and understand what Ninas is saying. And there are more than 50 videos, accompanying what was written. There were other things written. The website is there. If we do not take up the task of understanding and taking it down to them, so because it's a question of life and death, they are all going to die with the professor that is not listening. The market woman will be killed because when Fulani enters the villages they entered, they didn't make a distinction between the tall and the short, the young and the old, or the professor and the illiterate. They slaughter everybody and they take everybody's land. And so it is our task, everybody's task. It's not, Ninas is not, there's no special, what they call professional agitators who are paid to go and do everything and everybody will now get into the freedom. No, your life is at stake. You may think it's a joke until they turn up with AK-47 at your doorstep. You may be in Europe, you may be in the US, but you don't know the number of calls I've taken today from people whose communities have come under siege. They are shooting point blank at everybody because we've allowed that constitution to remain and continue to empower them. So we challenge all of us. It is everybody's undertaking. It's everybody's urgent business to get into this discussion, study what needs to be studied, understand what needs to be understood, and transmit it back to the communities. We have been traveling from one corner to the other. Like I said, I came back from just where more than 300 leaders of community development associations across the entire Middle Belt gathered to listen to what they should begin to do in getting, because if we shut down that journey to 2023, inside 2021, before the money begin to move, before the bags of rice and beans begin to move, it is when we fail to do it in good time that candidates will begin to emerge and monies will begin to fly. It will be our fault. It will be our doing. And the Fulani, the people killing us, the people holding us hostage and in bondage and in servitude, they do not have any single opportunity of prevailing. We have an alliance that now makes them a hopeless minority. We have a constitution they cannot save because it's our signature that is validating it. We've beaten them in the international arena, both at the UN, you saw it in New York the other day, and in the US at the highest levels of, because it is national security question that has arisen, that ISIS is holding hands with the government of Nigeria led by the Fulani in terror. And so we have everything. If we allow the Fulani to lead us to another election under this constitution, whatever we see the next day, including mass slaughter, because they are now invading in order to reestablish control by conquest. They've lost the title deed. Our people are the ones who do not know. And so they are still waving PDP and APC flag with them. They are luring you to close your eye to the defeat of their title deed. It is that title deed that brings them to your space and my space. We have a chance to get ahead of them by shutting down the renewal of that constitution ahead of 2023. We can do it inside 2021 if we wake up today. The internet enables us to do that. There's no reason why if 1 million people get on this task today, we cannot finish this task in 6 months. They won't even dare come talk about the election if the young people are the ones confronting them with what constitution, by what constitution are you going to govern if you win? Kingsley Moghalu, tell us. Patrick Utomi, tell us. By what constitution are you going to govern? How will your becoming president change the 36 states that make us political minorities forever? How will your becoming president change the question of exclusive list? The National Assembly, where you'll be pointing us to, are they the ones to decide our sovereignty for us? Ask them these questions. You are the one to ask them that question if you want to live. But if you want to die, of course, you go and form new party with them to go and win the election that Buhari and his kinsmen will conduct. They print plastic cards and give to you in a game, in a war that is decided by AK-47. How much more foolish can a people become? There are people who are responsible for killing you, are inviting you, they are acquiring AK-47. They outlaw you from doing anything to defend yourself. Every now and then they send the police to come and clear all the guns you may have. Anyone found with you that they didn't give to you under this constitution, you are already guilty to be shot aside. You can't see all of that and you're going to election with them and you're not asking questions. Under which constitution will you govern? If the young people that did NSAS, if they are listening to us at the time we're telling them that there's just one demand that will solve all these problems apart from police brutality. It will solve electoral fraud. It will solve corruption. Say you don't want this constitution anymore. If that is the only demand, it will not take 24 hours for something to begin to happen. If that happens today, give it 1 week. That all the people who are complaining about one thing or the other, or who want independence from Nigeria, all of them stand up to say, we're in a cage. We're in a cage. Nobody's going to any Odua Republic, or Ijo Republic, or Igbo Republic. As long as that constitution is standing, nobody's going to get resource control, or retrieve the port of Lagos into their control, or retrieve the bitumen of Ondo into their control, or prevent the Fulani from coming into your community to kill you, because all of those in uniform, whether they're in the army, or in the Air Force, or in the Navy, or in the police, or in the DSS, or prison, or immigration, all the guns in the land are in their hands. What democracy are you doing with them under this constitution? Are you not the one killing yourself by accepting to go to do democracy in a situation where your assets and all the guns in the land are in the hands of the enemy that wants to kill you off? They already brought in the people that will take your land from everywhere, Senegal, Mali, Chad. They're already in town. They're not coming tomorrow. Pantami is there documenting them as Nigerians. And when they kill you, they take the space. Go and see the number of communities they've renamed in Southern Kaduna and elsewhere, and in Plateau. You cannot continue to pretend you do not know about these things. You cannot continue to allow the criminals that are telling you to come and go to election. Peter Obi came out the other time to say, the problem with Nigeria is that the engine is knocked. That it is not the driver they should be looking for. It's how to replace that engine. Nigeria's engine is knocked. And in the coming days, we're going to come public with what we have discussed with all these people, calling you to come and join them to go and win the election. In the coming days, we begin to name them and tell everybody how much we went looking for them to save the people from this madness, from this slaughter that is never going to end. They are being dishonest, including the church leaders. We went to them one after the other, any one of them who have not spoken up on this issue. Because very soon they will be the one inviting you to go and register and get your PVC and vote. Vote for what? Vote to renew your enslavement? Vote to reinforce the slaughter coming towards you?
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tony. This is Johnny. You made the point loud and clear. You made it very clear. The area that I want to touch on is that of faith. You mentioned church leaders, and many of us have been in church. And if you have been in church, you have been taught about faith, the object of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith. It all comes back to faith. Without faith, you can do nothing. This is where we are at this point. For you to spread a message, for you to evangelize, you have to first believe. And the problem that I have seen with our people is that many people want to see this thing happen, but there's a mental block. There's a blockage of faith in our people in understanding that this thing is very possible. I think our people must stop seeing Nigeria and the constitution and this fraudulent constitution as immutable, as gravity. It is not in the same class and gravity. Nations rise, nations fall. If you look at your map, if you doubt this, go back and retrieve the world map of your primary school days and compare it to what you have today. What you're going to find is that national borders have continued to change. They have continued to shift. There are nations you saw 15 years ago that are no longer in that map. Go back 500 years and look at world maps. these things continue to change. What we are trying to do is not new. What Ninas is proposing is the framework of Ninas. What Ninas is trying to accomplish is not new. It has been done over and over and over again in the history of mankind. Just go and study the maps. What I'm trying to do now is to build your faith, because you have to understand and believe this and know that it is possible. You go back to we look at these things and it's like, my goodness, how is this going to happen? Nations are not gravity. Constitutions are not gravity. They are always at the mercy of the will of the people. If the people rise up today and say, no new elections until XYZ, until we resolve the issue of our foundation, that will happen. But you first have to believe that it is possible, because people look at it like it's some gargantuan task, some massive task, something beyond human comprehension. Somebody was saying something about, I was in another forum some days ago, and when somebody talked about election, like election is like it is air that we breathe. Like, there's going to be election anyway. If there's no election, what are we going to do? Like, election is what we eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, elections are this thing that we cannot live without. And these people forget that since from the Civil War all the way to 1979, there was no election. And still, the heavens did not fall. There was no election during those several years of military rule. There was no election. So we have all these things, all these mental blockages that are blocking our faith from us understanding that what Ninas is proposing is not out of this world. It's very practical. These are things that can be done. So I would say to that question, in addition to everything that Tony has said here, and thank you very much, Tony, is let us first believe. If you're finding it difficult, go back to the world maps and look at where the world has been, the roads the world has traveled in the past 500 years, the past 20 years, the past 30 years. Look at the national borders, look at the world maps, look at all those things, and then build your own faith. And once your faith is built, as mine is built, then you can go to this and you can go to any other person and preach it with conviction and tell them, yes, if you can join me, we can stop this election and we can have that nation that we all wish for. The nation that we have dreamt about, that nation where we don't have to travel to the different parts of the world to live. A nation with all kinds of resources, human resources, with some of the most brilliant people in the world. Can you imagine what we can accomplish if we can at least have the society that we want? That we can mold with our own brilliance and intelligence. It is within our grasp and it is very possible. All you have to do at this point is believe. Work on yourself first. Believe and then take this message. Because once you believe it, you can't stop preaching it, because I know in your heart of hearts you want it. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. I know Mr. Tony is going to have to leave soon. I think, Mr. Tony, in the next 20 or 30 minutes, you're going to have to leave. So we want to, a question, please flash your mic so we can have him answer it. He will be back tomorrow at Knights and Cardinals, the same time, 8 p.m. Nigerian time. So if you want to save your questions for that, you can. And he will be at a different room on Thursday and Friday. So if you have a question, please flash your mic and we can ask Mr. Tony before he wraps up. Okay, Frank, I see you. You can go ahead. Frank, are you there or should we take Obina?
Hello. I'm here. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to thank the forum, the organizers. I want to thank Tony. Every day I listen to him, I learn new things. What I really want to say here is this. To everyone, even myself, I'm not really clear of how we can achieve this, but we know one thing for a fact. We have tried elections. We know that's not the answer. So for anyone that's doubting, I would suggest and appeal. Let's start thinking about this proposal, how, even if it's not clear in our mind, let's start thinking about how can this happen? What are the possibilities? Let's put our focus on that, because we have tried elections before. We can go into this election again. It doesn't matter who is elected, who is the president. It doesn't matter if it's Peter Obi or whoever, even if it's Ade on this platform that becomes, even if it's Tony Nnadi that becomes the president. We know it will not take us anywhere. That's what I want to say to you guys, and I appreciate this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think the next person is Obina.
Thanks very much, and I think I apologize if this question has been answered already, but I have two questions. So there is an ongoing amendment process to amend the Nigerian Constitution. It started in July this year. And my question to Tony is, what has been the engagement with the current process of amendment? And is the question, or is the demand that it should not be an amendment but a replacement? And if so, because the amendment of the Constitution can only be passed into law if it is ratified by 2/3 of both houses of the National Assembly. So I'm just, I've heard the advocacy for it just in a couple of minutes that I was here. So I just really want to understand the actual practical process to get there. And then my last question is just to understand how that relates to the boycott of the election.
Right. First is to let you know that we're not talking about boycott. We're saying that we have not made a constitution. The 1999 constitution, so-called, is a fraud imposed to, put us in bondage by people who imposed it, who are now killing us of having seized our assets through it, all our economic assets and our rights to anything at all, including our right to life. Now, it is not to write another constitution that the campaign is all about. Some people say, oh, Ninas is campaigning for new constitution or for amendment to constitution. No. Your question shows you joined pretty late, because we had laid the ground to inform those who came earlier that the contention now is that we do not have a federation. We have not made a constitution. We have not made a union agreement. The constitution is union agreement. And we are here held against by force, against our will, by people who are pointing guns at us and saying we have made a constitution. And so what has to happen is not for a new constitution to be written. We have to take our sovereignty has to be put on the table one more time, and it is by referendum that we decide whether we want to continue in union. In that setting, even those who are fed up with the union will have, Ninas is prepared to take you as far as the point of voting in referendum for 2 items. Let everybody, if you can't read the whole document, you can at least read those 5 points of demand. It wouldn't take 3 minutes. It wouldn't even take 2 full minutes to read, so that you can know exactly what we say has to be done. We are not campaigning for any amendment to any constitution. We're saying we've not made any constitution. We're not campaigning for any new constitution to be written ahead of when we vote in referendums to be in union or not to be. It is only when we have voted in regional referendums according to those 5 points demand, I think is number 4, that we can go back to the question of writing constitution. If anybody is telling you that he's going to amend constitution, tell that person we have no constitution to amend. We've not made any constitution. If anybody is telling you, let's go and write another constitution, you tell him in what arrangement. Have we agreed to be in union with people who owe it a duty of faith to kill us? Have we agreed to be in union with people who say all men are not born equal, such that we are slaves and they are born to rule us forever? If we don't resolve those two preliminary questions, let nobody talk about going to write a new constitution, because that's what some of the lawyers are saying. Let's go and write another constitution. That is not what the campaign is all about. Let us go and agree afresh to be in union. Let us subject that let us subject that process to referendums. We have a process that will involve, a transition. We are not anarchists. Let us accept that we can no longer build on this foundation, this rickety foundation. Like we saw the house that collapsed in Ikoyi yesterday. This rickety foundation upon which we are building the Union of Nigeria and the democracy of Nigeria is going to collapse. The UN told us in 2018 that in 2019, Agnes Kalamat rapporteur mission, that Nigeria has become a danger to the global community under this constitution that is pressure cooker for injustice, because they found out that the Niger Delta agitation is coming from that constitution, the Biafra agitation is coming from that constitution, the Yoruba nation agitation is coming from that constitution. Everything, the killings by the Fulani in all of the rampage they are doing is coming from that constitution. So the UN says Nigeria under this constitution has become a danger to the global community, because one early morning the place will snap. 200 million people will begin to look for where to run to. And the global terror networks that are already converging in Nigeria, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, will have a quantum of human beings to use for their trade and engage the whole world in terror. That's what those who are paying attention, those who are not in that danger with you and I, that's what they already found out in 2019 from our engagements with them. The people who are in that danger are not listening. Some of them are arguing. They are not willing to read what is on the table, what they engage, what the contention is, so that they can discuss the matter, engage with the matter from the point of knowledge, from the point of what are the proponents saying. What is this campaign all about? They don't have an alternative in terms of they're not bringing something that can take us away from where we are. We are caught in something that is bound to consume us, except we do something about it. And so it is not a question of going to write another constitution or convincing anybody in Abuja. The National Assembly's mandate does not extend to constitution making. It is entirely our own right, exclusive right to make constitution. And we are saying we must now decommission what we have, and we must now go. And if the federal government is not willing to come along, I tell you, the owners of the sovereignties will go unilateral in taking back their portions of the failed Lugaden experiment of 1914, of the defunct Federation of Nigeria that died in 1967. That's where we are. So we're not beholden to them. We're not going to wait forever for them. We can only tell them to come so that we do it together. It doesn't become rowdy. But if anybody is thinking that we're going to be frightened into submitting, to be killed in the manner that is approaching us from everywhere now, under the supervision of the government of the Federation of Nigeria and its armed forces, that the Fulani had hijacked 100%, let that person know it's not going to happen. There's a majority that is saying this. That majority has organized itself. The right they seek to assert is called the right to self-determination, and it's inalienable. It doesn't depend on whether the Fulani or federal government agrees with us. It only depends on how many people can wake up, how many of our people can see that this can be done in 6 months, even 3 months, if we insist. That's where we are.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Mr. Nnadi.
Yes, sir.
Obina, was that you?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a follow-up question.
Okay, real quick, then yes. we'll go to Chidie Boime.
Yeah, I think the name is Chimdi Ebube, I think. Yeah, Obina, go ahead then. We'll go to
apologies.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your answer, Tony. There's one question that I asked an answer, and really, it's the practice. So let's assume that there's no constitution and we need to have a referendum. And what I'm asking you is, what are the practical steps? So specifically, who will call the referendum? Who will be the ones to carry out this referendum exercise? And who will take part in the referendum to determine, the questions that you've laid on the table? Thank
you. Mr. Nnadi, are you there, sir? Mr. Nnadi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, something disrupted. I'm actually on the move. I'm almost 50 kilometers from where I will have to sleep tonight. So go on, please.
Sure, no problem. So there was a question that I believe you already answered earlier. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to repeat the response. Mr. Nnadi has stated earlier that the people should rise and pressure the political parties not to hold elections because we want to legitimize this constitution. Mr. Nnadi, please, if I missed anything, please add to that, and then we'll have to take the next question, please.
We don't have a constitution. That's our contention, not to legitimize this constitution. Let the people settle two questions that have been standing out for almost 55 years. Those two questions went to Aburi. Those two questions were the things Bolaige and all the others who were talking about sovereign conference were trying to get resolved. Have we agreed to be in union? If yes, on what terms? The first question can only be answered by referendum of the people, not by any politician or National Assembly. The second question would then be in consequence of the answer from that referendum in that order. And that is what we're insisting had to be done now. Otherwise, we're laying ourselves open to be slaughtered in the name of Nigeria, owned 100% by the Fulani these days. That's where we are. It's not a matter of going to the legitimized constitution. We're saying the journey to election, we must say it loud and clear to the hearing of the international community. That's the time they will know that we are really serious in rejecting this constitution of master and servant. We cannot, in honesty, be saying we reject this constitution that enslaves us, and the same moment preparing to go to election that will revalidate it and enforce it in 2023. And so we say, let us say it loud and clear now to the political parties. Let us engage them. If we have to get into a fight with them, let us get into that fight. It's a much cheaper fight than AK-47 turning up at our doorsteps later because we refuse to engage our cousins and brothers who are doing political party because they want to go and get some benefit. It's a choice we have to make. Either we allow them to continue because we don't want to offend them, and then Fulani turns up with AK-47.
Right, that's a good one, Dr. Tony. I really appreciate it. And I have another quote from all you said. Nigerian constitution is a pressure cooker for injustice. That's a very good one.
It's the UN. I want us to research that. The UN, from our engagements with the US in 2019, 7 months, January to July, all those who did make decisions for the US were listening to these lamentations we brought in terms of the killings that were happening to us in the hands of the invaders, the Fulani, along with their ISIS supporters. You know, and after we had finished, we talk on phone. Thank you. After we had finished, the US evaluated everything, began to take policy actions, you know, on Nigeria. Right. Yes. Yes. And so it was after our engagements with the US that the US itself whispered to the UN to say, look, we have a big problem coming. The earlier we get up and go and engage it before it explodes to our faces, the better. And so the UN sent a rapporteur mission. I want us to investigate this, or even Google search, led by Agnes Callamard, UN Special Rapporteur on Nigeria, August 2019. They came to investigate the extrajudicial killings happening all over Nigeria. Everybody is killing us. Soldiers are killing, policemen are killing, kidnappers are killing, Boko Haram is killing, Fulani herdsmen killing, Ido upside down, Igbo upside down, Biafra, everything. After that investigation, the rapporteur raised a report that it was the constitutional arrangement of Nigeria that was responsible for what was the extrajudicial killings. He wants your vote. And that Nigeria, under that condition, is like a pressure cooker, that condition is like a pressure cooker for injustice. Everything we have lamented here today, are they not matters of injustice? Have we not seen that it's the constitution that created that injustice? The Niger Delta agitation, for instance, it is because the constitution took their oil and gas that they began to blow up pipelines of Shell and Mobil. It is because the constitution, took the guns from the middle belt that they can be slaughtered in the number they are being slaughtered, and they are now going into self-help. You saw their governor signing some bill the other day. Everybody should go get. They're going to license. They're going to arm their own security services. You saw, the eastern side, the agitation for Biafra because Nigeria was suffocating eastern Nigeria. Yoruba is on the streets. Sunday Igbo is held in Benin Republic because they insist that Yoruba is fed up with the union of master and servant. And so it is a matter of, it's not something that it's not of conjecture. The UN says to the rest of the world that Nigeria under this constitution is a danger to global security and peace, because that pressure cooker can boil over and 200 million people will be looking for where to run to. So what does that tell you? That the rest of the world has come to the determination that this constitution has to go down. And the only people who are not partaking in that discussion are the ones in that danger. Something is wrong with that situation. And that's why we're spending this volume of time in the midst of the many things we have to do to try to wake up those who are in that danger of death. It doesn't matter how much money you are making now, or what employment you think you have, or what business you may be doing. These people are coming to take your land, and they've already made up their mind to kill you off to be able to control it permanently. If you do not know that, and you go with them doing PDP and APC, when they're marching to you, towards you, then you are the one who killed yourself. Next question, please.
Okay, Chimdendo. Chimdendo, are you there? Chimdendo, I mean. Okay, Chimdendo. Okay. Before you go with your question, I believe Tombaba and Nathan and the rest of them, governors, all of you, giving us problem, telling us to go and vote, to go and reinstate our enslavement. Go ahead, Chimdendo.
All right, Mr. Tony, I thank you for your presentation and how you've been doing Ninas. I agree totally with Nina's proposal and what Ninas is doing.
There is noise in Tony's background. If you can mute.
All right. So I agree totally with what Ninas is doing. I buy into it. But the statement I'm going to make right now is independent, and the following statement is disassociated from Ninas. It does not represent Ninas, and it's not for Ninas, but I support Ninas. We all know what happened during the EndSARS and how our people were shot at and killed while asking for police brutality to stop. We know the government that we are going to go against. We know the government of Nigeria and how tasty they are. Mr. Tony here will never ask you to go into violence, neither will Ninas associate itself with violence. But we as citizens, we as presently constituted Nigerians, we that are seeking for self-determination, is on us to do the needful. We will not want a situation where people will protest or go on the street and be shot at again the same way it happened with EndSARS. There is no way we'll go on the street asking the Nigerian government and the political parties to shut and close shop, that their agents will not send their armies to come and shoot at the people. So as a result, as people with brain, as humans, it is left for us to defend ourselves. So as a result, we are going to be starting a group for self-determination defense. where we'll be discussing on how to defend ourselves and not get killed in the process of, expressing ourselves and letting the government of Nigeria to know that we do not want election come 2023.
Mr.
Let me come in briefly so that we can redirect ourselves. The first set of people, by the time we began to put this plan together, there were people that were already carrying arms. Asari Dokubo and the Niger Delta was already upside down and doing Niger Delta Volunteer Force. Gani Adams and his OPC were at the level where police in Yoruba land had to hide their uniforms. Police, I'm sure there are some people in this discussion that knew when that was the case. And so these were the first set of people we had to reach out to, all of the armed groups. And we persuaded them to keep their guns aside, that guns will not solve this problem by themselves. Because for every one rifle you bring out, the government was likely to bring out 10,000 rifles to confront you in whatever location. And so we told them, look, it is the constitution that empower and enable all those things against them. If they could come along so that we can call a meeting of the people, I'm sure most of you heard about Brunaco. We called a meeting of the people that lasted 2 years, the owners of the land, the owners of Nigeria. And we were able to work out what could become the basis, the new consensus to restore the federation or to dismantle it. Either we restore the autonomy of everybody or we dismantle the union. That's the one I said Buhari was part of, the Fulani delegation that attended. And what's his name? Syed Abubakar, the one that sorted in Sokoto, and he was in the army at the time. He was part of how the Fulani came attended. 164 ethnic delegation. The U.S. sent to observe a mission. European Union sent to observe a mission. And so we've gone through all these processes to come to the point where we got the regional blocks to repudiate that constitution. And we've now come to the final phase of enforcing the will of the people. Now, if anybody is foolish enough to think that we do not realize that it will come to boxing and wrestling, let that person go and purge himself of that folly. But what we're asking people to do at this time does not start with going to fight. Let people say, confront your church leaders and ask them, what have you said? I'm sure most of us saw Paul Adebaras's video where he declared from the altar that this constitution is a fraud, that this union is a scam as defined by that constitution, and that nobody should talk about going to another round of election under this constitution. Ask your general overseer, ask Adeboye, what are you saying about this? Because this is where the source of that killing happening to the flock is coming from. Ask Oyedekbo, what are you saying? Don't say it under the bed. Say it on the pulpit. Say it to the hearing of the whole world. Ask Mike Okonkwo. Ask Oyekilomi. Ask all the other people. Ask Nnjenje. Ask Ibiomi. Let the young people begin with them. Ask the lawyers in the land. Ask Osekome. Ask Agbakoba. Ask Falana. What are you saying about this? But you must start by reading what we put out and confront them with what is there. Let it be the dominant discussion that the owners of the land don't want this anymore. By the time you do that for 3 months, you discover that anybody coming to talk about election, ask Atiku, what does he say about this? What did he do before? We engaged him in 2016. He pretended he was going to be part of how it will be done. He went out to contest the election. Then we told him he would not be president, even if he won the election. And he did win the election. Something happened to the situation. Let us start, if we can listen and do what we have been asked to do. It will not even come to, if we only need to say it loud and clear. Don't let anybody say anything to you. Arm yourself with knowledge. Read what is written. Review the videos. More than 50 of them are circulating. The international community that took the US that took 7 months to interrogate what we are saying are not fools. The UN that sent people to come and see where you are being killed are not idiots. Why are we behaving like people whose brains have been taken out? Let us confront the people we have pointed out now. Let the lawyers in the land, the Bar Association, you saw them in Port Harcourt the other day, talking nonsense. Let the lawyers in the land be confronted to say, what have you said? What are you doing about this? The Constitution is the reason people are being killed. It's the reason people are being impoverished. Nigeria is now the poverty capital of the world. In all the indices of human development, we're coming from behind. Infant mortality. Everything bad. And where young people are dying in the desert, trying to cross. They're dying in the Mediterranean Sea. They're enslaving in Europe, slaving in America, slaving in Asia. There's a human body, there's a human part market being fed by young Nigerians running away. Their organs are being harvested in Libya. It's a full-scale industry. In the number seeking to escape from this hellhole, why can't we confront the people who are dragging us to the next round of elections, starting with the men of God who have a lot of influence on the people who are going to be led into that slaughter? That is where we need to begin from. Let us say it loud and clear. In no time, it becomes the dominant discussion. And then other things will follow. It will come to where nobody is able to introduce the subject of election if we insist. And if we know that our lives depend on it, there's no reason we can't insist. What else are we doing? What are we doing to solve this problem? Is it going to go away by itself? If we don't stand up and solve it, before I come to get into the street, let us even talk. Let us say it loud and clear. Let's not let anybody come tell us something else is going to do. Let Kingsley Moghalu come and answer the questions that can arise from what we have discussed this night. If he says he wants to be president, he will going to give you electricity. You ask him under which constitution. Ask him how he's going to do it. Ask him how your security will improve. Then he will tell you go to National Assembly. Then you tell him National Assembly is not the one to change what has to happen. It's the Constitution that made it so. Confront them. Knowledge is power. It's not theory. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is bigger than gun. I'm not a stranger to gun. But I'm the one that told all the people who gathered guns to say, let us use what is bigger than gun. If as an alliance of the South and Middle Belt, this minority decide to make it a rifle show, then nobody needs to tell them that they can't go that way. Nobody. You were all here when the attack helicopters they paid for were cancelled by the US. It didn't happen by accident. Even the Tucano jets that they procured, you heard when the US told them you can't use it beyond so places. Meetings are happening day and night. Even the UN that people went to the other time, letters were written to the Security Council. Discussions are happening as we speak. Let us do the little part we need to do. Shame on all of us if we can stop these people that are decided that the benefit they make is better for them than the lives of the millions of people that they pretend to be leading. Political parties. Next question.
Thank you, Mr. Nnadi. Is there anyone here who has a question on stage? Can you please blink your mic? Okay, I see, starting from the top, I see Pontius. Okay, Pontius, please go ahead.
All right. My question is just simple. I've heard all Tony says, it makes sense. The simple question is, are you ready for war?
Can I take that, Don?
No, repeat the question. No, repeat the question. I didn't hear.
Yeah, it is the first part of the question. Are you ready for war?
War between who and who?
War between
who and who?
War between the federal government and any region. Your region, Biafra region, any region. Secessionist.
Hold on. We have an alliance. I want you to work with the reality on ground now. There's an alliance of the South and Middle Belt that has gone before the global community. in places of decision making. I'm talking about the highest levels of the places of decision making among those who sell the guns they will use. In April, if you listen to that Adefarase video, in April of 2021, the US, the EU, and the UK, the ones who supplied them those guns, between 28th and 30th of April, all of them took a common position on Nigeria. And the first thing they told Abuja is that guns will not feature in this discussion. Go and find out whether it happened or it didn't happen. They told them that the guns you got from us will not feature in these issues being raised in this land. Not your guns, not our guns. Call a meeting, call a dialogue of the people to decide fresh legal instrument. Go and find out whether this happened. And if it happened, the people who are sticking out their necks, the people who have the capacity to stop them, have taken a position, pointing them to our proposition. Call a dialogue of the people. Don't pull gun on this occasion. Guns will not solve it. And we can, even the British told them that their partnership will not resolve this. The British foreign ministry. And so where we are is that the boogie of war by who? Will the Fulani take on all of us? They are not in any position to. They are not in any position to. It is when they isolate you in one corner, you want a Biafra that has no map, then they surround you and beat you down. You want Odua with no plan, they surround you, isolate you, and beat you down. Ogun is unhappy. They surround Ogun, hang them, and beat them down. Ijo complains. That's what they've been escaping with all these years. And that was why we drew up a 22-year plan to take them from underneath. That constitution is the only thing we are taking down. The union it erects does not stand. The federal government you are talking about, we say we have no federation. You cannot have a federal government in the absence of a federation. That military, the US told them that if matters come to where, it will become a rifle show, you don't have a military that is going to be able to contain the situation. Don't mind what is going on now because some of our own people refuse to listen to us and they've created a situation where they're isolated in one corner. Are the killings going on all over the country today? No. It's going on in these places where people decided to gamble, not to use not to use the strategy that is on the table. So there's no war that can happen in the setting. This alliance is an overwhelming majority. The people in uniform are Yoruba men, Ijo men, Igbo men, Berom men, Tiv men. And if you think because there's a Nigeria that was deceiving them before, that you're going to give them weapons to go and kill their own people because you call yourself federal government, you will find out in the battlefield that there's no Nigeria anywhere.
Okay, good one. Let's go to the next person, please. Mr. Ade, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I thought is there anyone on stage who wants to speak? I have some commentary to share with Mr. Nnadi and I have to get his response. Yes, okay, so let's go with Mr. Raven first. Go ahead, Raven.
Yeah, I have listened to Tony speak in several rooms, and one of those things that I keep asking myself is that do we as a people have to rely on the validity of what the white man whose interest comes first in the name of Nigeria? We continue to run to those same people who, by their own design, merge the country and the people in this way so that their exploit, their benefit can last as long as possible. We keep running to the British, to the UN, and we know the UN. We know those who can decide and undecide in the UN. We know the power blocks.
And the alliance between the US and the British comes first before any country or any people. And the interest of the United States or the British in Nigeria comes first. So telling us to run to these same people, can't we take our own destiny in our hand instead of running to them and asking them, allowing them to pilot whatever they want to pilot? We are all evidence of what happened in South Sudan and the Sudan. Millions have to be killed. Millions and millions have to be killed. The US was in this world. They turned their blind eyes. The British turned their eyes. The UN itself turned its blind eyes. So how are we so guaranteed that this so-called UN has suddenly wake up and want to take the food of the British and that of the America from their table? How is that going to be possible?
Okay, it looks like Mr. Nnadi had some connection issues. So while we're trying to get him back, just to refresh the room, this is the review. We discussed political affairs, the political issues, current affairs, etc. If you're not following the house, please follow the house, follow the moderators, and those who are on stage. So just as a recap of what we've been discussing, Mr. Nnadi, Mr. Nnadi is back. Okay, Mr. Nnadi, please answer the question. I'm not sure if you heard the question, Mr. Nnadi. If you could please address it. The question was, why should we depend or run to external powers to help us achieve our purpose in Nigeria?
I don't think he has gotten to a better place for stronger network. So maybe you can go ahead and refresh, then take some submissions while we wait for him.
So we were discussing the fraudulent constitution of Nigeria. Mr. Nnadi gave us a brilliant historical context, a brilliant, very nuanced legal exposition of the constitution, citing several articles that basically give the government ultimate power. And he went on to explain his solution, which he says is a 22-year plan. So he's been working on this for the past 22 years. He gave us his history, how he was a brilliant young man who won scholarships in Abeokuta, but because as an Igbo man who was one from the region, he was denied the scholarship, which is, in my opinion, that's a nepotism that we can complain about. And it's bound to happen when you put different ethnic groups into the same space. But he went on to explain to us how he ended up becoming a lawyer, because they would not allow him to be in the military college and fly for the Air Force, again, because his politics and his ideology was found to be threatening. So eventually he became a lawyer, and understanding what the problems of Nigeria are stemming from the constitution, he came up ultimately with a plan, a 22-year plan to take down the constitution. And his ultimate solution for us is that, knowing that this constitution is fraudulent, the people should take back their power. We should form what he calls a constituent assembly eventually. But before we do that, we should not participate in the processes of election that are propagated by this constitution. Because if we do that, we are simply empowering the very thing that is holding all of us back. So we should basically put pressure on the political parties to block them, stop them by all means necessary. Because if we don't fight off the political parties, we will eventually be fighting off the Fulani with guns in our faces. So if we take on the political parties now and we force them not to have election, then we could have a referendum to decide, number one, do we even want to be in the same country? And number two, by what means do we want to be governed? So I think that I've done justice to the context of this discussion. I think at this point, before Mr. Nnadi is able to come back, I'm not even sure if he'll make it back tonight. I think we can open the floor for discussion. So anybody from the audience or from anybody on stage, any of the moderators or any of the speakers on stage who wants to make a past commentary, you are welcome to. And I yield the floor. Thank you. MJ, please go ahead.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Please, I want to ask a question. You just made a statement right now. You said we have to fight all the political parties, right, for us to be able to achieve, um, is it bringing down the constitution or not empowering them? Now, how do we achieve in these political parties without blood flowing? Because right now you can see what the country. Yes, we have a problem. Oh my god, my network. Yes, we have a net. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Um the constitution. Now, how do we effectively make this change without people's life being lost? Big men at the top getting themselves, soiling their hands and killing more people, because it's serious chaos. We can't wait till 2023 for all these things that, trust me, a lot of people are dying, and a lot of people don't even have jobs. There's no hope for so many people, and we are all searching for a solution. If bringing down the constitution is going to work and get people to do things right, how do we do this without, when you say fighting fighting these political parties?
Okay, Mr. MJ, if I think I've heard your question. Is there anyone on stage who wants to address that question? Moderators, perhaps. If not, I will take it.
Okay, I think Mr. Tony is back.
Yeah. Very, very quickly. Let me just say, I think it was the network that went off. Am I coming through?
Yeah, you're coming through. Welcome back, sir.
Right.
MJ, I think someone asked a question. Then I don't know whether you got the first question.
I got the question. I got the question of why do we go to the Western powers? Now, we know that the Fulani are in joint venture with the British. They've always been in that joint venture. And the British gets whatever they want in Nigeria through them. And now, they've also gone to bring in ISIS that is looking for a new operational base and resource, sovereign resources. In order to, first, they will resettle the Fulani from everywhere in your space, and ISIS will have a new operational base. That is a joint venture in another flag between the Fulani and the British and the Fulani and ISIS and other terror networks. But we who are in that area, who are in that problem, looking back at what happened in the war that happened here before, and all of things that happened since after that war, we decided to get also a superpower that will have enough stake to be on our own side of that disputation. And we identified the US as having a national security question that can be framed within the context of what's going on with this other alliance. And so we went into a discussion for another joint venture in which the US, that is at war with ISIS and the global terror networks, will have to partner with this alliance of NINAs in order to provide a quarantine, in order to impose a quarantine, on the Sharia belts that has attracted these ISIS and the other terror networks into our space. And so it was because we were able to show them how it will impact them that it became their national security. So a question to be answered. And we told them it will cost America blood if they do not come along, because ISIS has been dislodged in the Middle East from being able to establish the global Islamic caliphate that will go doing their terror business all over the place. And we say, US, if you do not come along now, these people have been admitted into our space by those who pretend to be our federal government, but they are full and basically. We show them evidence of that joint venture. Is the one that chief host in this territory. They interrogated and investigated. We went back and forth with all the Congress, with the State Department, and all of those who should know. Because if the US did not go to stop it, the ISIS will reinforce itself with Nigeria's sovereign assets and then become much bigger than any terror they've dealt with in the past. To that extent, it then became not we going to beg them to come and save us, to come and we brought them, we gave them a plan to save themselves from the consequences of terror on the scale that can come if ISIS is able to seize this space in the manner we saw Afghanistan. And we can imagine what has become the strength of that Taliban. If Nigeria will snap in the manner that these terror networks are planning to do with their Fulani hosts, I tell you, Afghanistan and Taliban will be a child's play to what can go wrong. And so the US is invited into this place. And so they saw something for which their own national security, imperative compels them to move in a certain direction. And therefore, we found a partnership in that thing we are doing for their own sake. And Trump did set up a 67-country alliance that will go in with that plan. It was the election of November that delayed some of the things, but I can tell us now that that whole thing is back on track, especially since after Afghanistan. I will not do more than that. Britain that was up.
We lost Tony.
I think so.
I guess we do.
I'm reporting something that has been done, not that we are planning to do tomorrow. Britain is already, more or less incapacitated in this particular occasion. And the nationals, it doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans that are in power in the US, the national security question arising from the convergence of the global terror networks in Nigeria will not go away. I can tell you this much. And actions are in process if we do our own part. Because there's a policy on their part not to send further boots to the ground in the manner it used to be. But our alliance and what we told them we will do, if we do our little part, even if we want to debate and argue, let us look at what has been done. The information about how all these things were done are in our website. Those who have not looked at them will think we're just making up stories. But those who look at them will realize that this much has been done, and what is left is within our reach to do if we do our little part. That's my answer.
And Tony, let me add a little something. Let me tell everyone specifically where to find the information that Tony Nnadi was just talking about. The engagement of 2019. If you go to the website ninasvoice.org, you're going to find interview. Google Tony Nnadi interviewed by Frank Gaffney. That interview tells you what the US was told. We're not just talking about that radio interview. Start with the Tony Nnadi speaking at the National Press Club in Washington on January 17, 2019. The video is online. National Press Club, Washington, Tony Nnadi. You can Google with those. And then 2 days later, at the audience on that event was Frank Gaffney, who was who is president of a Washington think tank on national security called Center for Security Policy. He was a national security. He was a deputy defense secretary during the Reagan administration. He was very close to Trump. In fact, his first choice for national security advisor. a very powerful Washington player. Another man there was Frank Wolf, who was a former congressman, congressman for 24 years, who was responsible for the American Religious Freedom Law Act. He was in that audience when Tony Nnadi spoke at the National Press Club in Washington, January 17, 2019. 2 days later, Frank Gaffney interviewed Tony Nnadi on radio in the United States that was broadcast all over the United States. And that interview is also online. Google Tony Nnadi interview Frank Gaffney, and you're going to see that interview. It's a 1-hour interview that where you see what Tony Nnadi said to the Americans about what's going on in our space in the Nigeria Lake Chad Basin. And then Americans heard that speech, that broadcast, and many of them were calling their leaders. It was those things that happened in January led to what happened in June and July in Washington, because the United States government sent invitation to Tony Nnadi to return to the United States. The engagement at the House of Representatives, United States, was June 5th, 2019. Tony's speech there, what he submitted to them there was, I think it was Tony. Your speech on that day was I have it right here with me. What's it called again? Where they were, there's a name for it. I wanted to say the right name, but let me just describe it for you. Where he countered all those narratives, false narratives that they've been pushing, where they're taking people doing ethnic cleansing and calling it banditry and all kinds of names. He attacked those falsities that have been pushed to the international community as to what's happening in our space. That was June 5. Frank Wolf was there. Frank Gaffney, all of them, they were there as a team with Tony Nnadi. And the United States even went a step further to invite the victims of these killings in the Middle Belt there. The mother of Leah, the Chibok girl, was there. People from Adara, people from Agatu, they were there in Washington with Tony Nnadi. On June the 11th, that was the U.S. Senate, at the U.S. Senate. And these are committee meetings where these matters were being addressed. And then Tony Nnadi was invited again for, there was an event by the State Department, which took place on July 16th. So these are all things that are online. These are things that happened. You know that here in America, when you're dealing with the US government at that level, this is a true democracy. They scrutinize things. They are there for the public. The people look at, these things are in the open. They know that there are things, of course, they are going to have behind closed doors, but then there are, at least you know that something is going on. So these things were done very publicly. At the end of those engagements in Washington, where Washington was given a prescription as to how to solve this problem, the quarantine plan Tony Nnadi was just talking about was presented to them. They sent Agnes Callamant. That was how the next month Agnes Callamant was in Nigeria to see what is going on. And then she made that indictment of the Nigerian constitution, calling it a pressure cooker for injustice. Look for that online too. So what we're talking about is not something that are being thrown at you. These are things that really happened that you can Google and search for yourselves. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if I can just follow up on that, I've always said that it's a combination of internal pressure and external pressure through the international community that will eventually push us where we want to be. Those who come with pessimism and say that the international community has no role to play are simply not correct. But it's a combination of both that will eventually get us to where we need to be, in my humble opinion. Is there anyone else who has something to say on the stage? Please flash your mics.
And before we take the next question, I know we've had Mr. Tony for over 3 hours now. He has been gracious enough to stay with us. He will be back tomorrow at Knights and Cardinals, and on Thursday he will be with Southern and Middle Belt Assembly. So if we can try to wrap this up, Mr. Tony won't mind staying longer, but we do want to respect his time and give him time to rest. If we can wrap this up in the next 15 minutes, that would be great. So any other questions, please flash your mic so we can get to the question quickly and have Mr. Tony go get some rest.
Okay, Nnameka, please go.
Hi. So I've been listening to the conversation. Just got a very brief question to ask, and it's all about there are obviously above 100 ethnic groups in Nigeria. So listening to the conversation, I noticed there has to be some form of consensus or agreement within regions, because if we're to go to, according to what Mr. Tony was said, kudos to him, we have to be identified by our indigenous culture or identity. So my question to Mr. Tony is how is the consensus going to be like if we're going to, you know, international bodies to seek for not necessarily support for us to be identified separate from Nigeria? What's this consensus going to look like? Okay, so is it going to be a representation of what the new whatever it is going to look like? Is it going to be one voice on the international stage?
Thank you. The answer is a precise yes. That's why we spent the length of time we did to organize what has become this alliance that separates the rest of Nigeria from those who have embraced these strange civilizations of Sharia and feudalism, under which the rest of us are liable to be killed. Sharia because we are infidels in the eyes of the people, feudalism because we are slaves in the eyes of the same people, and they've seized our sovereignty by virtue of the constitutional instruments they imposed. And so, in going to the international community, we have done the work of getting right down to the grassroots, to the constituent units. There are hundreds of nationalities. In the Middle Belt alone, there are over 100 something. In the Lower Niger, that is south and southeast, in Ogoja area alone, you have almost 10, 12 different languages in that northern part of Cross River. You come down to Akwa Ibom, where the Anang, the Efik, and all of the people that flow from, and you come Ogoni, you come into rivers, you see the number of nationalities, you get into Edo, you get into Bayelsa, that's a joke continuing. But in Edo, you begin to see all of the Isha and the Bini and the rest of them. Isekiri, Urobo, in Delta, Isoko. So you see, we had to go and sit down with them, show them what was happening to all of us and what we could do. And then we mandated the distillation of a charter of relationships. There's something called charter of relationships. And it was mandated by the Solomon Assembly in Port Harcourt in April of 2015. It's in process as I speak with you. It's being processed. And that's for the Lower Niger. The Middle Belt is also doing their own, in which the T, the Doma, the Joko, the Berom, the Kataf, and all